This is LBC with Nick Abbott.
Simon Marks is LBC's Washington correspondent and joins us on the line now. Hello, Simon.
Good evening, Nick.
How are you?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
Very well. Disappointed to see that Trump and his weird spokesmodel are doing a victory lap, having brought down the head of the BBC.
They definitely are doing a victory lap. President Trump on Air Force One today, taking to social media as he learnt of the decision by Tim Davie and Deborah Turness to resign. Did they resign? Were they pushed? 50-50 on that one. But the White House absolutely delighted because, of course, they had seized on these claims regarding the Panorama documentary about President Trump and the January the 6th uprising on Capitol Hill and the way in which President Trump's sound bites were edited together to make it look as though he said to them, we're going to march up to Capitol Hill and you are going to fight like hell, even though those two parts of the speech are very much separated by several minutes, if you go back to the transcript of the original event. But, you know, there's no doubt that on January the 6th, President Trump did urge his supporters initially to protest peacefully on Capitol Hill, but then amped them up later in the speech and said, if you don't fight like hell, we're not going to have a country anymore. Nonetheless, that edit, I think most people that I've spoken to who, like me, work in the TV industry, think at the very least was clumsy on the part of Panorama. And it's certainly extraordinary that the BBC has kind of twisted in the wind for the last several days until today. It appears to have taken government intervention to force the ouster of Tim Davie and Deborah Turness, the Director General and Head of News, respectively. For the White House, this is a big win. We heard from President Trump last week that he considers the BBC to be 100% fake news. That is exactly what his press secretary, Caroline Levitt, said. She said that one of the worst experiences she has in her life is when she travels to the UK and she is forced to watch BBC News in her hotel room, presumably because the staff have hidden the remote somewhere so she can't change the channel, or she doesn't know how to change the channel. But look, I think this speaks to a bigger shift that is taking place, not just in terms of the White House press corps, but in terms of the British press corps in Washington. I mean, it's been pretty clear for the last few weeks that the plan ultimately on the part of Caroline Levitt is to take that BBC seat in the White House briefing room, which I believe they share with Newsweek magazine. It's like a fractionally owned seat in the briefing room. It seems pretty clear to me they're going to take that away from the BBC and hand it over to GB News, which is very much now their favourite channel in town, and it allows them to dispatch the BBC to the quote-unquote legacy media hinterlands of the White House briefing room. You know, Auntie's reporters, along with the rest of us, will be stuck at the back shouting questions at Caroline Levitt and trying to get her attention, while it's perfectly possible that GB News finds itself with a pretty decent seat in that briefing room because they are now, of course, Donald Trump's favourite British TV channel.
And it's not the only media organisation that Trump has attacked, and all of whom have capitulated under his attack for the benefit of their shareholders, and they include Paramount, the parent company of CBS, Google, YouTube, Meta and Twitter, and
ABC.
Disney.
Exactly.
Disney, the parent company of ABC, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the pattern that we're witnessing is absolutely clear. And it is, by the way, one of the reasons why more and more people, certainly in this town, I mean, I can tell you this from personal experience, are turning to alternative sources for news. And one of those sources is this very radio station. I mean, we now know from, you know, the fact that people very occasionally come up and recognize me in Washington, D.C., and they're Americans, but we also know it from the data that that we see, particularly with regard to LBC's YouTube channel, that, you know, around a third of the audience is now coming from the United States. And that's because I think there is an audience here in the US that is increasingly disillusioned with media entities here that have bent the knee before Donald Trump. And look, I mean, he hasn't really so far succeeded in the takeover of ABC News, but I think that's absolutely next on his to-do list. CBS, to all intents and purposes, now is captive to people that are relatively loyal to President Trump and to his agenda. The Washington Post captive to Jeff Bezos's decision to bend the knee to Donald Trump. This is a trend, and we're only at the end of the first year, not even at the end of the first year of his presidency. We've got 3 more to go.
Right, let's talk about the shutdown. Apparently, Donald Trump has ordered U.S. states to stop paying full food aid to low-income families, and the number of them are relying on what they called SNAP payments of 42 million people. He's using starvation as a weapon?
Well, he has been, and there is every indication tonight, Nick, that it has worked. Because the latest news from Capitol Hill is that this government shutdown may be clattering to its conclusion, and may be doing so because centrist Democrats on Capitol Hill are capitulating to the Republicans. The Senate has been in session all weekend, and tonight Republicans believe that they have peeled enough Democrats away from the party's leadership to get a stopgap funding measure passed through the Senate in a vote later tonight that could see the government reopen in several days' time. The reason why it's going to take so long is because speeding up the process of reopening the government and getting all of this tied up with a ribbon would require consent from all 100 senators, and there's no way the Republicans are going to get that. So it's going to be a slow series of votes that gets this through. Then the entire House of Representatives, which has already passed a stopgap funding measure, would need to come back to Washington, D.C. and pass the new version of the agreement that the Senate is drawing up. Early reports, and I will caution that these are early reports, suggest that the Democrats have not got very much out of this deal. They appear to have secured a promise from the Republicans that there will be a vote on extending subsidies to help millions of Americans pay for Obamacare next month. That's going to enrage the left of the party, which presumes correctly that the Democrats will lose that vote and doesn't believe that any negotiation that involves a compromise on Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is tolerable. They also appear to have extracted a concession that all of the federal government workers that were laid off, not just furloughed, but fired during the course of this shutdown, will be rehired. And that is a compromise by the White House, but frankly, not much of one. So at this point, if this vote goes through, if they've peeled away the 8 Democrats that they need to bring it across the finishing line later tonight or in the early hours of tomorrow, it would suggest that the stage will be set for the government to reopen, but the stage will also be set for a bruising internal fight among Democrats over why centrists in the Senate have capitulated to the White House and agreed to this series of proposals from the Republicans. And that's because they're feeling the heat, and they're feeling the heat from constituents in many parts of the country who literally don't know where their next meal is going to come from because these food assistance payments have been held up, and also, of course, because they're feeling the heat from the travelling public at the end of a weekend in which collectively I think nearly 4,000 flights were cancelled all over the country because the air traffic controllers aren't showing up for work. What a way to run a country.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was about to say. Yeah, Simon,
to it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for that. Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent.